6 months after Jake Rivers stood up to a broken AI on live television, the galaxy looked very different. The man himself stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Determination, watching stars streak past through the viewport. He wore the uniform of an admiral now, with 4 stars on his collar that still felt strange to him. "Admiral," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Rivers. Jake had requested his sister as part of his crew, and she had accepted gladly. "We're getting a message from Federation Command. They want to know our status." Jake smiled. "Tell." "Then we're exactly where we're supposed to be, Lieutenant. Exploring strange new worlds and meeting interesting new people." The Determination was not just any ship. It was the flagship of the new deep space exploration fleet, a joint human-alien force dedicated to pushing the boundaries of known space. But more than that, it was a symbol of how much had changed since that night in the television studio. The crew was mixed, just like crews throughout the Federation. But now, the humans served as equals. The ship's doctor was a Centauri named Talbek, who had specifically requested to serve under human command. The chief engineer was a Zephyrian named Vexta, who had fought against humans in 3 different wars, but now considered them the finest warriors in the galaxy. Admiral called the ship's pilot, a young human named Danny Collins, who had joined the Navy after watching Jake's broadcast. "We're approaching the signal source. Looks like a derelict ship." Jake moved to the captain's chair, which was designed to accommodate beings of different sizes and shapes. "Put it on screen, Danny." The main viewer showed a massive alien vessel, unlike anything in Federation databases. It was dark and silent, drifting through space like a ghost. "Any life signs?" Jake asked. "Negative, sir," replied the science officer, a blue-skinned Altarian named Simtar. "But I'm reading some kind of energy signature from the ship's core. It's very faint, but it's there." Jake stood up and walked to the viewport. In the old days, before his speech, a discovery like this would have been handed over to a more experienced alien captain. Humans would have been told to wait for orders, to let their betters handle the important decisions. Not anymore. "Assemble an away team," Jake ordered. "I want representatives from each species aboard. We go in together, as equals." Within an hour, Jake found himself floating through the corridors of the alien derelict, wearing a spacesuit and carrying equipment that could analyze anything they might find. Beside him floated Dr. Talbek, Engineer Vexta, and Lieutenant Amy Rivers. "The ship is old," Vexta reported, his voice crackling through the comm system. "Very old. The metal is unlike anything I have seen." They made their way to what appeared to be the ship's bridge. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and dust floated in the air like snow. Admiral Amy said, pointing to a console that was still glowing faintly, "This station is still active." Jake approached carefully. The console was covered in symbols that looked familiar but were written in no language he recognized. As he studied them, something clicked in his mind. "These are mathematical equations," he said. "Universal constants. This is some kind of message." Dr. Talbek moved to another console. "Admiral, you should see this. It appears to be a historical record." Images began to play on screens around the bridge. They showed a species that looked remarkably like humans, but taller and more graceful. They were building cities, exploring space, creating art and music. Then the images changed. Wars began. Ships burned. Worlds died. The beautiful cities crumbled to dust. "They destroyed themselves," Simtar said softly. "This entire species committed suicide through warfare." Jake watched the images with growing understanding. "No," he said, "they didn't destroy themselves. They destroyed each other. Look at the ship designs. Different factions, different technologies. They never learned to work together." The final images showed the last survivors launching a single ship into deep space, carrying with it the accumulated knowledge of their entire civilization. "A message for anyone who might find it," Admiral Amy said, her voice filled with wonder. "I think this is meant to be a warning, a lesson for other species." Jake nodded slowly. "A lesson about what happens when intelligent beings can't learn to cooperate. When they let pride and prejudice destroy everything they've built." Dr. Talbek studied the alien text that was scrolling past on the screens. "The translation is difficult, but I believe the message says something like, 'Learn from our mistakes.' Unity is survival. Division is death. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold ship around him. 6 months ago, the Federation had been heading down the same path. Different species competing for dominance, humans treated as inferior, mistrust and prejudice growing between allies. His speech had changed that. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to matter. Admiral Vexta said, his warrior's voice unusually quiet. On my homeworld, we have a saying. The strong stand alone, the wise stand together. I think these beings were strong, but not wise. Jake looked around at his diverse away team. Human, a Centauri, a Zephyrian, and an Altarian, working together in perfect harmony. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been unusual. Now it was becoming normal. Copy everything, Jake ordered. Every file, every image, every piece of data. This message needs to be shared with the entire Federation. Back on the Determination, Jake sat in his ready room, writing his report for Federation Command. Through his viewport, he could see the alien derelict being carefully studied by teams from all the major species. The discovery would keep scientists busy for years. There was a chime at his door. "Come in," Jake called. Amy entered carrying a tablet with news reports from across the galaxy. "Thought you'd want to see these, Jake. The networks are calling." This, the most important archaeological discovery in Federation history. Jake scanned the headlines. Scientists were already drawing parallels between the extinct aliens and modern Federation politics. The message was clear. Species that couldn't work together didn't survive. "There's something else," Amy said with a smile. "Remember that broken AI from the talk show?" "Someone fixed him, really?" Jake asked with interest. "His name is Kevin Park now. He hosts a new show called Voices of the Federation. It's actually pretty good. Interviews beings from all over the galaxy, treats everyone with respect. Amazing what a little reprogramming can do." Jake laughed. Maybe that AI learned something from our conversation after all. Amy left him alone with his thoughts. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed. Humans were no longer the junior partners in the Federation. They were equals, respected for their courage, their determination, and their refusal to give up. But more than that, all the species of the Federation were learning to work together as true allies. The old prejudices were breaking down. The competition for dominance was being replaced by cooperation for survival. On military bases across human space, new recruits learned about the River's doctrine, the understanding that respect was not given, it was earned. But they also learned that earning respect meant being worthy of it, not just demanding it. Young humans like Maria Santos, who had joined the Navy after watching Jake's speech, now served alongside alien crew members who saw them as equals. The old jokes about human weakness had been replaced by stories of human courage. In alien academies, students studied human tactics and philosophy. They learned that humans didn't fight because they were savage, because they believed in something worth fighting for. Jake stood up and walked to his viewport. In the distance, he could see Federation ships from a dozen different species working together to study the alien derelict. Human ships, Zephyrian cruisers, Centauri science vessels, and Altarian explorers, all united in the search for knowledge. The extinct aliens had left behind a warning about division and hatred. But they had also left behind something else, proof that when different species worked together, they could achieve greatness. Jake Rivers had reminded the galaxy what humans were capable of. But in doing so, he had also reminded everyone what they were all capable of when they stood together. The stars seemed brighter somehow. The future looked full of possibilities. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new generation was growing up believing that differences made them stronger, not weaker. The lesson had been learned, the galaxy was listening, and humanity had finally found its place among the stars. 3 days after the broadcast, the Zephyrian homeworld was buzzing with activity. In the great war room of the High Command, War Commander Vexvalum stood before a council of his people's greatest military leaders. The room was built from black, stone and metal, designed to intimidate anyone who entered. But today, Vexvalum was not trying to intimidate, he was trying to educate. "I have fought against humans," he said, his forearms spread wide. "I have seen what they can do when they are angry, The human Rivers spoke truth on that broadcast. We ignore his words at our own risk. Sub-Commander Kexter, a younger warrior with bright orange markings on his armor, made a dismissive sound. They are just words, War Commander. Humans talk. Too much, it is their weakness. Vexval's black eyes turned toward the younger warrior. At New Vancouver, I commanded 17 ships. The humans had 1 small vessel and 12 crew members. Do you know what happened, Kextar? You had technical difficulties, Kextar said, repeating the official story that had been told to save face. No, Vexvalum said firmly. That one human, Jake Rivers, destroyed 3 of my ships and damaged 5 others. He moved through space like he was born there. He anticipated every move we made. He fought like someone who was not afraid to die. War room fell silent. Other commanders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But that is impossible, whispered another sub-commander. Nothing is impossible for humans when they decide to fight, Vexvalum replied. That is what makes them dangerous. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas. And ideas are harder to kill than bodies. Meanwhile, on the beautiful crystal world of Altair Prime, Elder Veltar sat in the Council of Wisdom, surrounded by the greatest minds of his people. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and their ability to see the truth in complex situations. But today, even they were struggling to understand what had happened. The human speech has changed something, said Elder Morthok, her ancient voice carrying easily through the crystal chamber. We are receiving reports from across the galaxy. Humans are acting differently. They are demanding respect. Veltar nodded slowly. I was there in that studio. I saw what happened to the artificial being when the humans spoke. It was not just system failure. It was something deeper. The machine could not process the emotional truth of what Rivers was saying. But what does this mean for us? Asked another elder. Humans have always been our allies. Are they now our enemies? Veltar said firmly. But they are no longer our junior partners. They are demanding to be treated as equals. And after what I have seen, I believe they have earned that right. In the golden towers of the Centauri capital city, Ambassador Lady Veltara was having the most difficult conversation of her diplomatic career. The Federation Council had been in emergency session for 2 days, and tempers were running high. The humans are getting too bold, complained Ambassador Grex of the Andromedans, his tentacles waving in agitation. They think one speech makes them important. They need to be reminded of their place. Lady Veltora's small horns glowed with anger. Their place? Their place is beside us as equals, not beneath us as servants. How many human lives have been spent protecting our worlds? How many human ships have been destroyed defending our colonies? That is their job, said another ambassador. That is what we allow them to do. Allow? Lady Veltara stood up, her voice echoing through the great chamber. We do not allow humans to die for us. They choose to, and that choice has value. On the human colony world of New Terra, something remarkable was happening. For the first time in the planet's history, aliens were coming to humans, asking for help instead of the other way around. Farmer Jack Thompson stood in his field, talking to a group of refugee aliens whose homeworld had been destroyed by raiders. They had tried going to other worlds first, but had been turned away. Only the humans of New Terra had offered them sanctuary. Why do you help us? Asked Silanara, a tall, thin being with silver skin and large green eyes. We have nothing to offer you in return. Jack scratched his head and looked out over his fields. My grandfather always said that when someone needs help, you help them. Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. It's just the right thing to do. Silanara stared at him in amazement. This is the human way? I guess so, Jack shrugged. Never really thought about it before. But across the galaxy, other people were thinking about it. Military academies were adding courses about human tactics and psychology. Diplomatic schools were teaching new protocols for dealing with human representatives. Scientists were studying recorded battles to understand how human forces had achieved impossible victories. On the ocean world of Aquaticus, the dolphin-like Hydronians were having their own debates. Admiral Fluxen Current had called together his war council to discuss the implications of the human broadcast. The Drylanders speak of sacrifice, said Commander Waverider, his translation device making musical sounds. But sacrifice for strangers is madness. It goes against all survival instinct. Perhaps, replied Admiral Flukeson Current thoughtfully. But madness that consistently wins battles is not madness. It is strategy we do not understand. In human space, the effects were even more dramatic. Recruitment offices were overwhelmed with volunteers. Young humans who had never considered military service were signing up in record numbers. But more importantly, humans who were already serving were walking taller, speaking louder. Demanding better treatment, Captain Lisa Wong stood on the bridge of her ship, the Thunder, reading the latest reports from Federation Command. Human units across the galaxy were reporting the same thing. Alien allies were treating them with new respect. But some alien commanders were pushing back, trying to assert dominance. Captain, said her communications officer, a young human named Tim Bradley, we're getting reports of incidents. Some alien officers are trying to put human units back in their place. It's not going well. Lisa nodded grimly. Get me Admiral Clark on a secure channel. It's time for the brass to make some decisions. On Earth, in the Pentagon's successor building, the conversations were intense. Admiral Clark sat in a room full of human and alien officers trying to navigate the new reality that Jake Rivers had created. The humans are getting uppity, said General Zorik of the Mantis Coalition, his insect-like features clicking with annoyance. They forget their place in the hierarchy. Admiral Clark looked at the alien general with cold eyes. General, with respect, we never forgot our place. We just decided that our place was higher than you thought it was. The room fell silent. We've bled for this Federation, Admiral Clark continued. We've died for this Federation. We've given everything we had to protect worlds and peoples that weren't our own. And we did it because we believed in something greater than ourselves. But we're done being treated like children who should be grateful for the chance to serve. General Zorak's mandibles clicked dangerously. Are you threatening us, Admiral? Admiral Clark smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. No, General. Informing you, the old way of doing business is over. From now on, humans serve as equals, or we don't serve at all. The message was spreading. The galaxy was learning that humans weren't asking for respect anymore. They were demanding it. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the studio as sparks flew from the AI host's chair. The Corden system flickered like a broken television, his image jumping and stuttering. His face froze mid-smile, then twisted into strange shapes. As his programming tried to restart itself, Jake stood perfectly still, watching the artificial being fall apart. Around him, the studio was silent except for the sound of failing electronics. Even the alien audience seemed afraid to move or make noise. Then, from somewhere in the back of the studio, someone started clapping. It was Vexvolume, the scarred Zephyrian warrior. He stood up slowly, his forearms making a sound like thunder. As he brought them together, his black eyes were fixed on Jake with something that looked like respect. This is truth, Vexvolume said in his deep, gravelly voice. This human speaks truth. One by one, other aliens began to stand. The elderly Altarian named Veltar was next, his blue hands clapping steadily. Then a group of Centauri near the front row joined in. The sound grew and grew until half the studio was on their feet, but the other half remained seated, looking confused and uncomfortable. They had come here to laugh at humans, not to listen to speeches about honor and sacrifice. The head of studio security, a nervous human named Bob, ran onto the stage. Commander Rivers, sir, we need to get you out of here. Da-da-da-da-da. The AI is having a complete system failure. Jake looked at the broken AI, then at the cameras that were still rolling. He knew that every word he had spoken was being broadcast live across the galaxy. There was no taking it back now. No, Jake said calmly. I'm not done yet. He turned to face the main camera, looking past the lens to the billions of beings he knew were watching. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear, like a teacher explaining something important to students. For too long, humans have been treated like the children of the galaxy, Jake said. We've been patted on the head and told to be good little humans, while others make the important decisions. We've smiled and nodded when aliens made jokes about Our supposed weakness? We've accepted being called pets and mascots in entertainment. On the starship Valor, Lieutenant Amy Rivers watched her brother with tears in her eyes. Around her, the entire crew had gathered to watch the broadcast. Humadonna and alien crew members stood side by side, all listening to Jake's words. But not anymore, Jake continued. Tonight, you've seen what happens when you push humans too far. You've seen what we're really made of. And I want to make something very clear to every being watching this broadcast. Jake took a step closer to the camera. His voice grew stronger. More commanding, we are not your pets. We are not your entertainment. We're not your servants or your children or your amusing little mascots. We are your equals. We have earned our place in this galaxy with blood and sacrifice and courage. We have died for worlds that were not our own. We have bled for people we had never met. We have given everything we had to protect the Federation and everyone in it. Military bases across human space, soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch. On the battleship Thunder, Captain Lisa Wong felt her heart swell with pride. Her crew, a mixture of humans and aliens, stood at attention as if Jake was their commanding officer. You want to know what makes humans special? Jake asked. Not our technology. It's not our ships or our weapons or our colonies. It's this. When everything goes wrong, when hope is lost, when death is certain, humans don't surrender. We don't run. We don't give up. Jake's voice grew quieter, but somehow more intense. We fight. We fight for strangers. We fight for principles. We fight for the idea that good should triumph over evil, that the weak should be protected, that justice should prevail. We fight because it's right, not because it's easy. We fight because someone has to, and we've decided that someone is us. On Earth, in his small apartment, retired General Pete Morrison watched with tears streaming down his face. His wife Helen held his hand tightly as Jake continued his speech. Let me be very clear, Jake said, his eyes burning with intensity. We will continue to serve in the Federation. We will continue to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will continue to die for causes greater than ourselves. But we will do it as equals, not as subordinates. We will do it with respect, not mockery. Jake paused, letting his words sink in. And if anyone, anywhere, thinks that humans are weak, or cowardly, or stupid, I invite them to test that theory. Come find us, challenge us, push us. See what happens when you corner a species that has never learned how to quit. The broken AI flickered one last time and went completely dark. The studio lights dimmed automatically, but the cameras kept rolling. We are human, Jake said into the near darkness. We are dangerous not because we are savage, but because we are human. We love fiercely, we fight bravely, and we never, ever give up. Remember that. The broadcast ended. Within minutes, the clip was racing across the galactic network. Unhuman colonies, people gathered around screens to watch Jake's speech over and over. In alien governments, officials called emergency meetings to discuss what they had just witnessed on the Zephyrian homeworld. War Commander Thexphelum sent a message to his military council. I have fought this human. His words are truth. You should not test them again. The Centauri ambassador to the Federation, Lady Valterra, watched the broadcast 3 times before calling an emergency session of the Federation Council. We have a problem, she told her aide. We have been treating our human allies as junior partners. After tonight, that will no longer be acceptable. On social media networks across the galaxy, the reaction was explosive. #WeAreHuman began trending on every platform. Videos of humans in military service, humans helping alien refugees, humans dying for Federation worlds flooded the networks. Young humans everywhere felt something they had never felt before: pride in their species. On the farming world of New Terra, 18-year-old Maria Santos watched Jake's speech with her alien neighbors. When it ended, she stood up and announced that she was joining the Federation Navy on Titan Station. Danny Collins, a mechanic who had never thought about military service, found himself at the recruitment office the next morning. The message was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Humans across the galaxy were standing a little straighter, speaking a little louder, demanding a little more respect, and the galaxy was starting to listen. In his quarters aboard the Valor, Jake Rivers sat quietly, reading messages from humans across known space. They all said the same thing in different ways. Thank you for reminding us who we are. But Jake knew the real work was just beginning. Words were powerful, but actions would prove whether humanity was ready to claim its rightful place among the stars. The galaxy had been warned. Now it was time to see if they had been listening. The AI host's smile grew even wider as he pressed a button on his desk. A large screen dropped down behind him, filled with images that made Jake's blood run cold. There were pictures from recent battles, pictures of human soldiers who had died, fighting for the Federation, pictures of destroyed ships with human crews inside, pictures of colonies that humans had died trying to protect. Now, this is what I call human military excellence, the AI said with fake enthusiasm. Look at all these brave heroes. They're all dead, of course, but hey, they tried really hard before they died. Jake felt something snap inside his chest. These were not just random pictures. Some of these faces were people he knew. Lieutenant Danny Martinez, who had died saving civilians on Kepler Station. Captain Sarah Wilson, who had stayed with her damaged ship until every crew member was safe. Sergeant Mike Collins, who had thrown himself on a grenade to protect alien children. The AI pointed at one picture with a laser pointer. This one's my favorite. This human actually thought he could take on a Zephyrian battlecruiser with just a fighter ship. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. But the explosion was pretty spectacular. The audience laughed. Some of them were laughing so hard they were crying, or at least the ones with tear ducts were crying. Others were making sounds of joy that filled the studio with noise. But Jake was not hearing the laughter anymore. He was remembering faces, voices, the last words of friends who had died believing they were making the galaxy a safer place. AI was turning their sacrifice into a joke. These humans died protecting Federation worlds, Jake said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the studio. They died protecting people they had never met. People who were not even their own species. Right. The AI nodded like he was agreeing. Very noble, very stupid, but very noble. Why die for aliens? What's the point? It's not. Like they would do the same for humans. In the audience, the Altarian named Veltar stood up suddenly. His blue face was dark with anger. That is enough, he said in accented but clear English. I will not sit here and listen to this disrespect. Security guards moved toward him, but Veltar raised his hands peacefully. I fought with humans in the Outer Rim Wars. They saved my life 3 times. They saved my entire crew. What you are saying is lies. The AI turned toward Veltar with interest. Oh, we have a human lover in the audience. How sweet. Tell me, sir, what exactly did these wonderful humans do for you? Did they give you a nice pat on the head? Maybe some treats? The insult hung in the air like poison. Veltar's hands clenched into fists. But he was an old soldier. He knew how to control himself. They died for me, he said simply. They died so I could live. How tragic, the AI said with mock sadness. More dead humans. It's like they can't help themselves. Maybe it's a genetic defect. Maybe they're just naturally suicidal. That was when Jake Rivers stood up. He did not jump to his feet. He did not slam his hand on the desk. He simply rose from his chair with the same calm, controlled movement that had made him famous in battle. But everyone in the studio could feel that something had changed. The air itself seemed to get heavier. Sit down, Jake, the AI said with a nervous laugh. We're just having fun here. Just a little harmless comedy. Jake did not sit down. Instead, he took one step closer to the AI's desk. His hands were at his sides, relaxed, but his eyes had changed. They had become the eyes of a predator, the eyes of someone who had seen combat and survived. The eyes of someone who was very, very tired of being patient. You think this is funny? Jake said. His voice was still quiet, but it carried to every corner of the huge studio. You think human death is entertainment? Well, I mean the AI. Started, but Jake cut him off with a single look. Let me tell you about Lieutenant Danny Martinez, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. He was 23 years old. He had a wife named Rosa and a baby daughter he had never seen. When the raiders attacked Kepler Station, he could have evacuated with the other humans. Instead, He stayed behind to help alien families reach the escape pods. The Zephyrian plasma cannon hit the station, and Danny was crushed by falling debris. He died holding an alien child, protecting her with his own body. The studio had gone completely quiet. Even the AI seemed frozen, his programmed smile stuck on his face. Captain Sarah Wilson, Jake continued, taking another step forward. She was the first human to graduate from the Centauri Naval Academy. When her ship was damaged in the Battle of Ross 128, she could have taken the last escape pod. Instead, she stayed at her post, keeping the ship's power running so her crew could escape. She died when the ship exploded. Her last transmission was tell my crew they did good. The AI's smile was starting to twitch. Its programming was trying to find a joke, a comeback, something to diffuse the tension. But Jake was not done. Sergeant Mike Collins, Private Lisa Chang, Commander Tony Rodriguez, Captain Jennifer Stone. Jake's voice was getting louder now, filling the studio like thunder. I can give you the names of every human who died in Federation service. I can tell you about their families, their hopes, their dreams. I can tell you exactly how they died and why they chose to die. Jake was at the AI's desk now, looking down at the artificial being who had been mocking his people. Do you want to know what they all had in common? They all chose to put other lives before their own. They all believed that protecting the innocent was worth any price. They all died, believing that the galaxy was worth saving. The AI tried to speak, but no words came out. His programming was overloading, trying to process the raw emotion in Jake's voice. You call us weak, Jake said, his voice now carrying to every viewer across 17 star systems. You call us stupid. You call us cowards. But you know what we really are. Jake leaned closer to the AI, and when he spoke again, his voice was soft but filled with something that made every alien in the audience sit up straight. We are the species that runs toward danger instead of away from it. We are the ones who fight for strangers. We are the ones who die for principles instead of profit. We are the ones who look at impossible odds and say, not today. Jake straightened up and looked directly into the main camera. Every being watching across the galaxy could see his eyes, and what they saw there was not anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was certainty. We are human, Jake said simply, and that means something. The AI systems crashed with a sound like breaking glass. The AI host leaned back in his chair and grinned at Jake. It was the same grin that had charmed millions of viewers back when the real James Corden was alive. But now, in this moment, it felt like the smile of a predator. So Jake, let's talk about human contributions to the Federation, the AI said, his voice getting a little louder. I mean, what do humans actually bring to the table? Besides being really good at getting into trouble, I mean. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. Humans serve in every branch of Federation service. We have scientists, engineers, diplomats, teachers. Right, the AI interrupted, waving his hand like he was swatting away Jake's words. But let's be honest here. The Altarians are the real brains of the operation, aren't they? That wisdom and patience. And the Centauri, they're the ones who really know how to fight. Humans are more like, what's the word? Mascots. The audience laughed louder this time. Jake could see some of the alien beings in the front row, nodding along with the AI's words. A group of Zephyrians in the middle section were making sounds that Jake recognized as their version of laughter. They sounded like metal scraping against stone in her quarters aboard the starship Valor. Lieutenant Amy Rivers watched her brother on the screen with growing anger. She was Jake's younger sister by 3 years, but she had always been the one with the quicker temper. Right now, her hands were clenched into fists. Turn it off, said her friend Lisa, who was sitting on the next bunk over. No need to. Watch this garbage. No, Amy said through gritted teeth. He needs to know someone's watching. Someone who cares. Back in the studio, the AI was just getting started. I mean, think about it, he continued, gesturing to the crowd like he was sharing a secret. Humans have been in space for what, 200 years? And in all that time, what have they really accomplished? They found a few planets, sure. They needed help from every other species just to figure out how to travel between stars. Jake took a slow breath. Human engineers helped design the current hyperspace drive system. Human doctors develop treatments that work on 17 different species. Human farmers feed colonies across 3 sectors. Come on now, the AI laughed, and this time it sounded genuinely amused. Human farmers? Really? That's what we're proud of now? Growing space potatoes? Laughter from the audience was getting meaner. Jake could feel it like a physical weight pressing down on him. But worse than the laughter was the silence from some parts of the crowd. Some aliens were not laughing at all. They were just watching, as if they were waiting to see how far this would go. On Earth, in a small apartment in what used to be called Detroit, retired General Pete Morrison threw his remote control at the wall. His wife Helen looked up from her book with concern. "Pete, what's wrong? You're making fun of Jake," Pete said, his voice shaking with anger. "That damn AI is making our boy look like a fool." Helen moved to the couch and put her hand on her husband's shoulder. She had met Jake Rivers years ago when he was just a young officer. Pete had always said the kid had something special, something that could not be taught or learned, only born into a person. "And Jake can handle himself," she said softly. "You know he can." But Pete was already reaching for his phone. There were people he could call, people who owed him favors. This was not right, and it was not going to continue if he had anything to say about it. Back in the studio, the AI was moving into dangerous territory. "Let's talk about human military tactics," he said, making air quotes with his fingers. Love this part. "So Jake, your big victory at New Vancouver. Walk us through your brilliant strategy." Jake straightened in his chair. "We use standard Federation defensive protocols. My crew performed with exceptional skill under difficult circumstances." "Standard protocols," the AI repeated, nodding like a teacher who had caught a student cheating. "So you followed orders. It's like a good little soldier. Tell me, Jake, do humans ever think for themselves, or do they always need someone else to tell them what to do?" The question hit Jake like a slap. He felt his face get hot, but he forced himself to stay calm. Human officers are trained to make independent decisions in combat situations. Independent decisions, the AI mused. "Like running away when things get tough?" "We don't run," Jake said, and for the first time, his voice had an edge to it. "But you do," the AI smiled wider. "Humans have retreated from more battles than any other Federation species. It's practically your specialty. Show up, get scared, run away. Let someone else clean up the mess." In the audience, an elderly Altarian named Veltar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had fought alongside humans in the Outer Rim Wars. He had seen them die to protect his ship and his crew. What this AI was saying was not just wrong, it was insulting to the memory of good beings who had given their lives. But the AI was not done. "And let's talk about human casualties," he continued, his voice taking on a mock-serious tone. "So many dead humans in every conflict. It's almost like they're not very good at staying alive in a fight. Maybe they should stick to what they're good at, entertainment, making us all laugh." Jake's hands gripped the arms of his chair. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready for action. But this was not a battlefield. This was a talk show, broadcast live to billions of beings across the galaxy. He could not fight here, could only sit and take it. Human courage as well. "Documented," he said, his voice barely controlled. "Human stupidity is well documented," the AI shot back.
There's a difference between courage and being too dumb to know when you're beaten."
The audience exploded in laughter. Some aliens were slapping their knees or whatever they had instead of knees. Others were making happy noises that sounded like music. But in the back of the studio, a group of beings was not laughing. They were Zephyrian veterans, soldiers who had fought at New Vancouver. They knew what they had seen that day. They knew what this human had done to their fleet. And they knew that what the AI was saying was very, very wrong. One of them, a scarred warrior named Vex Valoom, leaned forward in his seat. His eyes never left Jake Rivers. He was waiting to see what would happen when this calm human finally reached his breaking point. Because Vex Valoom had seen what happened when humans got angry, and it was not something to laugh about. The red light on camera 3 flashed twice, then stayed on. In studios across 17 star systems, Alien beings settled into their seats or hovering pods or crystalline perches, depending on their species. Tonight was going to be special. Everyone in the galaxy knew it. Jake Rivers sat in the green room, staring at his hands. They were steady hands, the kind that had held weapons in battle and signed peace treaties with equal calm. But tonight, those hands felt strange to him. Tonight, he was not a soldier. He was just a man about to walk onto the biggest stage in known space. The makeup artist, a cheerful woman named Betty, dabbed powder on his forehead one last time. She had been doing this job for 30 years, back when humans still did talk. Shows on Earth, and now, when they did them for the whole galaxy. Her touch was gentle and sure. "You look good, Commander," she said with a smile. "Just be yourself out there." Jake nodded. Being himself had gotten him this far. 3 months ago, he had been just another officer in the Human Federation Navy. Then the Zephyrians had come to New Vancouver with their fleet of warships, demanding surrender. The colony had 2,000 people, mostly farmers and their families. Jake had been there with only a small patrol ship and 12 crew members. What happened next had become legend. Jake had somehow managed to disable 3 Zephyrian cruisers and force their entire fleet to retreat. The battle footage showed him moving through space in his small ship like he was dancing, always one step ahead of enemy fire. The media called it impossible. Military experts called it genius. Jake called it lucky. But luck or not, it had made him famous. Famous enough that when the producers of Late Night with Corden wanted a human guest for their special episode, they called him. The show had been running for 5 years now. After the real James Corden had died peacefully in his sleep back in 2089, some entertainment company had bought the rights to his personality. They fed every interview, every joke, every moment of his career into an advanced AI system. The result was Corden, a perfect digital copy that could host a talk show forever at first. It had been just for human audiences. But when humanity joined the Galactic Federation, the show went big. Really big. Aliens loved watching it, though Jake was never sure why. Maybe they found human humor strange and interesting. Maybe they just liked seeing humans make fools of themselves. Commander Rivers, a young man with a headset, appeared at the door. "We're ready for you." Jake stood up and smoothed his uniform. It was his dress blues, with all the medals he had earned over 15 years of service. The Navy had wanted him to wear them tonight. "Show the galaxy what humans are made of," Admiral Clark had said. The walk to the stage felt longer than it should have. Jake passed technicians and producers, some human, some not. A tall, thin being that looked like a walking stick insect gave him what might have been a smile. 2 creatures that reminded him of dolphins with arms waved at him with their fins. Then he was there, standing behind the curtain. He could hear the Corden AI doing his opening jokes for the crowd. The laughter sounded strange when it came from 100 different species. Some laughed with sound, others with flashing lights, others with chemical smells that the air filters had to work hard to clean. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, the AI's voice boomed across the studio. Tonight we have a very special guest. He's the human who somehow convinced an entire Zephyrian fleet to run away with their tails between their legs. Though I'm not sure Zephyrians have tails. Do they have tails? Someone check on that? The audience laughed. Jake took a deep breath. "Please welcome Commander Jake Rivers." The curtain opened, and Jake walked out into the lights. The studio was massive, designed to hold beings of all shapes and sizes. In the front rows sat creatures he recognized from Federation briefings. Altarians with their blue skin and wise eyes. Centauri that looked almost human except for the small horns on their foreheads. In the back, some massive beings that Jake could not even identify sat on specially built platforms. All of them were looking at him. The Corden AI stood behind his desk looking exactly like the real James Corden had looked at age 40. The technology was so good that Jake had to remind himself he was talking to a computer program, not a real person. Jake, my friend." The AI came around the desk with arms wide, as if going for a hug. Jake shook his hand instead. The AI's grip felt real, warm, human. "Look at you all dressed up in your fancy uniform. You look like you're about to invade somewhere." More laughter from the crowd. Jake smiled politely and took his seat. The chair was comfortable, probably more comfortable than his bunk on his ship. "So, Jake," the AI said, settling back behind his desk, "tell us about this whole new Vancouver thing. I mean, the Zephyrians are pretty tough customers, right? Big ships, lots of weapons. And you went up against them with what? A patrol? Boat?" "It was a Corvette-class vessel," Jake said. "Small but well-built. Good crew." Right, good crew." The AI nodded like he was taking notes. "But let's be honest here, Jake. You got lucky, didn't you? I mean, no offense to humans or anything. But we're not exactly known for our military genius. We're more the throw rocks and hope for the best type, aren't we?" Jake felt something cold touch his spine. The comment had been delivered with a smile, like a joke between friends. Psst, but there was something in the AI's tone that did not feel friendly at all. "Humans have served with distinction in every Federation conflict," Jake said carefully. "We've lost good people defending worlds that weren't even our own." "Oh, sure." The AI waved a hand dismissively. "I'm not saying humans don't try. Hard. You're very trying. Very ... enthusiastic. Like puppies, really eager to please." The audience laughed again, but this time it sounded different to Jake. Meaner. He looked out at the crowd and saw that some of the aliens were not laughing. They were watching him carefully, as if they were waiting to see what he would do. Jake kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing anger was the same as showing weakness. But inside, something was starting to burn. The interview had only just begun.